Hello and welcome. I just wanted to sit here for a moment to remind you of the magnificence of our Buddha Rupa, the image of the Buddha here, which is raised way above the floor where I ordinarily sit, and from the camera angle doesn't really show its true perspective. So now I'll resume my ordinary position. And I think the first comment today will point the conversation towards perspective. Yes, I did listen to a talk on this subject, perspective, by Ajahn Brahm recently, whom is visiting the UK. I had a message from my mother in the UK after I inquired after her welfare, knowing that my sister had been away with her family, so there were less people around her, family members. And she tells me it's very cold. I looked this morning on Google Weather and yes indeed, it's apparently 4 degrees in England at the moment. Here it's also feeling, from my perspective, very cold too. Not only because it's been raining a lot, still, very heavily too, really testing the roof in here. And being that the wind and the rain is coming from all directions, it's being tested similarly from all directions, as are we. We're tested from all directions, mainly through our sense contact with the world. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then thinking about all of this experience, whether it be in the here and now, or whether it be thinking about the past, or imagining the future. Now we can do one thing to reduce that papancha, overthinking. The Pali word for overthinking, rumination, if you like, is papancha, by not thinking about the past and not imagining what the future will bring, but remaining present in the here and now with what is going on around us. And this is practicing mindfulness in meditation, and also outside of meditation we can use a meditation object, something like observation of the breath, breathing in and breathing out, to very easily bring us into the present moment, here and now, because it is only happening here and now. Each breath in requires no thought after it. We don't recall our last breath. Neither do we need to think about the next breath. So the past, the future, is not there in the breath. It's here, it's now, it's present. So it's a very good anchor in the present moment, which is all we have. Our sense contact, our sense consciousness of that contact, vijnana is the Pali word for sense consciousness, is often the beginning of thought, papancha. And one insignificant moment may lead to a whole train of thinking and thought subsequent to that contact, either through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, or touching, whether it be from memory, recollection of past events, and then bringing about judgment on that, whether it's recollection of something we like and we want more of, or whether it's something we dislike and we want to avoid, bringing up feelings of desire, sensual desire, or aversion, wanting to get away from a situation. This is the nature of the aggregates, the 5 aggregates, our condition in which we're born into this realm with. They are our physical body, rupa, that which does see, hear, smell, taste, touch, with its thinking brain, thinking. Our perception, or firstly our maybe feelings, Vedana, the Pali word Vedana. So the physical feelings and the mental emotions arising from that sense contact through the body, through its sense organs, through its windows, from which these winds coming from all directions are entering our building of the body and mind. With its leakages, its faults, much like the Samadhi Sala here, which is refurbished recently and new, but undergoing a testing time through harsh conditions, up to which it stood very well. Only a few leaks here and there, which will be dealt with when the weather has improved. And much like our bodies and our minds are being tested, we can run away from what we don't like, or we can face up to what we don't like. Or we can see when we're really wanting something to either go for it, chase it, and try and quench an unquenchable thirst, satisfy insatiable desires, or stand back and let it go. Say, I've probably had enough. This is greed showing its ugly head here, wanting more of something I haven't got enough of. Now that's coming from sanya, and that's the Pali word for perception. Perception or recollection. Perception is based largely on recollection, because the judgment through perception is coming from recollection of past experience. So I feel particularly cold these mornings, currently, and in the night. I wrap my robe around me and not quite shiver, but feel cold and happy to be in shelter and not outside in the rain, but covered with something. Welcome the company of the warm, fluffy cats who might come and sit on my lap during these chilly, cool meditation times. But that's my perception based on living in this part of the world for a long time, because the temperature here is 24 degrees as compared to the temperature in London, which is 4 degrees. Now, how would I feel in London? Well, I think very cold indeed. But if I was used to 4 degrees, that could feel not so bad at all compared to -4 or -5. I spent what we used to refer to as the winter retreat season in the UK as monks. I wasn't a monk at the time, but I was living as a monk with the same adherence to the same precepts and way of life, and only eating once a day, but living in at that time what we call a porter cabin. It was just a metal container, but it had windows. And it was before I had the van. But I was in a, or was it when I had the van? No, I think it was when I first had the van and was living in a van. The previous winter retreat I'd spent in a porter cabin in the middle of fields in the UK. But this particular winter, the first winter in my van, I remember being snowed in, and I understand there's snow coming in the UK soon from my mother's conversation. But I think the temperature went down. I had a thermometer in my van. It went down to -5 that particular winter. And I had no real form of heating, only a gas fire in the van, which of course I couldn't leave on if I was going to go to sleep because of carbon monoxide issues. So I had to just stay awake during the night and sleep when it was a little warmer during the day. And then I was trying this practice of what's called tumo, where you build up inner warmth inside of you. Now, I'm not going to go into that because that's just a practice that's aside from what the Buddha teaches, that's come about culturally through monastic living and monks living in the foothills of the Himalayas and in the mountains where it gets very cold. But essentially what it involves is staying awake and not sleeping when you might die of hypothermia, and really concentrating on the warmth of the body that there is. And like you'd huddle around a fire externally, you huddle internally around the warmth your body self-generates. And it is very warming. It keeps you going. It keeps you awake, and it stops you really suffering from the cold externally, because you're bringing the conscious awareness, the attention inside with conscious mental effort. This is tumo. So if you're very cold, try it in your meditation. Focus on the breath still, but focus on the difference in temperature. When you inhale, the breath is cool. When you exhale, it's reached the level of the body's temperature. So 24 degrees, I remember in living in England, that this was a balmy, warm summer temperature. One would be in t-shirts and shorts. Now, of course, I'm not wearing much here, so similarly so. But I feel cold because I've got used to it being usually around 34 degrees, not 24. But now, having got used to that, if it was 4 degrees, I'd probably be very cold. And -5, I don't think my tumo practice would work so well now. But it's only perception, isn't it, sanya, that drives the results of this experience. So it's a very good topic for Dharma discussion, and it's a very good way of seeing things clearly. Vipassana is the word that means seeing things clearly. So rupa, bodily, the physical body. Vedana, feelings. Sanya is perceptions. And then vijnana is sense consciousness. So you see in that, sanya is responsible for a lot of our reaction or non-reaction to things. Because it's very much based on recollection, things coming from our past experience, it can very much bias, determine, change the perception of something. So what feels cold to some might feel warm to others. What feels warm to others might feel cold to some. And people might find the heat here ordinarily unbearable. We get used to things. But when we see clearly, this perception is delving into the past and bringing that forward into the present moment, we can interrupt that process. Bring ourselves into the present moment here and now, using tools like the meditation object of the breath to enable us, to help us to do that. And that is grounding ourselves in the present moment. That is true mindfulness, unaffected by judgmental conditions or thoughts coming from past experience, perception. So the first comment, it's kind of rather long, but I think I'll have to read through it. It's no way I can summarize it easily. So someone is writing to ask this, or recollect their experience or their perception of a situation. I was at a hospital to deliver exams to a family member, and at the reception desk there were 3 attendants. When I was going to direct myself at one, a woman said to the desk attendant, "Hey, can you help with something?" And she straight cut the line in front of me. The woman attending to her didn't mention I was there. She saw me but ignored me. Luckily, another receptionist got free and I was on my way. My question is, these small things, do they register to them? Nothing happened seriously, but they cut in line and the woman saw me and ignored me. Do these things reflect in their karma eventually or not? So firstly, I don't see what the problem is there. You were dealt with and there were 3 attendants. You cannot know that the woman at the desk ignored you. She may well have seen you, but was giving her 100% attention to the individual she had decided in that moment, and bearing in mind they're probably under a lot of pressure and they're at work and they're working very hard. She dealt with the person, one person, 100%. And that's a good thing. She shouldn't be waving her arms at you, talking to you, trying to placate you while she deals with another. Concentrate on one thing at a time, because she knew she had 2 other attendants present who could take care of you, as evidently they did. So I'm not really seeing the problem other than purely from your perspective of someone, and I don't know where you are, but whom is used to orderly queues and queuing. Now, this is something the British are very fond of, or not fond of, I don't think that's it, but very regimental about queuing. Queuing for the ice cream van, queuing to buy a bus ticket, queuing to get on a bus. Where there isn't a queue, the British will form a queue for no apparent reason, other than they take their turn. It's a very cultural thing. And if someone jumps in front of you in that queue, it's very disconcerting indeed. But in India, where I've lived for a long time, there's no such thing. It's who gets on the bus or to the ticket office or to the ice cream first. By force, by just shoving in, getting in. It's like a bundle wherever you go. Now, if you're used to that, then you'd be very confused by the nature of a queue. So it's your in this case, very much perspective and your perception that someone cut in front of you. And you're overthinking the situation. You're thinking about their karma and your feelings. Me and mine, they and theirs. Rather than, what are you there to do? You're there to take your exam papers to give to a family member. That will be achieved eventually. It may take 5 minutes, 3 minutes, or 1 minute longer than you anticipated when you first saw the desk. If there had been a queue of 20 people, you would have resigned yourself to the fact that you would be waiting for some time before you were dealt with. As it happened, there were an abundance of people to assist you, and you were helped. So one counts one's blessings in these situations. And if you are having to queue, you use the time to relax. Enjoy that moment you have to do nothing. And bring your attention back to that breath, which is where? It's in the present moment. It's not thinking about your journey there or what you have to do next. It's standing, waiting. So not only are you developing patience, khanti, patience and endurance, you're using an opportunity you've been given, and you can be grateful for, to just relax, enjoy the moment, here and now. If someone jumps in front of you, they may have urgent and pressing requirements and needs. It's a hospital. They may be going to see someone who's just about to die. You don't know that. It doesn't matter. It's not your business. As for their karma, they've really done nothing wrong. They may not have seen you. It's a hospital. They may have their mind on much more serious things than you. You may be the center of your world, but you're not the center of theirs. And this is part of the practice. The practice's aim is to understand that nature of self and gradually detach ourselves from that self-view. Personality view. Sakaya Ditti. I think I said Sakaya Ditti in a previous talk for the right view, the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path. And I meant Samaditi, which is right view. Sakaya Ditti is wrong view, or personality view. Kaya is body, physical body and thinking brain. It's having the view that your physical body and thinking brain is you, whereas it is not. It is a culmination of these 5 khandhas, of physical body and thinking brain, of feelings, of recollection, perception, sanya, vedana, feelings, and vijnana, sense consciousness. But within their sense consciousness, with their contact of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, the person who you perceived as to having to push in front of you, albeit in a very sterile and neutral situation where it seemed there was not a lot of pressure on anyone, you consider them to have been offensive to you. Did it register with them? You probably didn't. No. They probably had their mind on more important and pressing things in the present moment. Ask yourself, where is your mind to be bothered by this? It's not on patience, khanti, patience and endurance. It's not on equanimity, being able to withstand all of these winds coming from all directions. So, if you're in a different culture where people don't queue, in very busy places even, it's just one big bundle, you'd be very surprised if someone said, "Oh, after you, sir." And I'm continually surprised. In India, I'm like the same as anyone else. It doesn't matter that you're dressed as a monk, wearing robes, or you are a monk. There's no differentiation there. But in Buddhist countries, like here and Thailand, you are seen as a monk. It's a uniform, if you like, and it's very difficult to queue. People will always come and get you and pull you out of a queue, even in busy places, and take you to the front, because they see you as someone whom is a samana, a monk, a practitioner of their religion, even though you are clearly foreign and of a different colour, but you're always taken out of the queue and brought to... And this, similarly, because of our perception, from me as a European, is always surprising and does make me feel a little uncomfortable, because I'm very happy to queue with everyone else, take my place in the queue. So it's the opposite effect. But when in a busy place like in India, where there is no queues, you can feel, well, I'm a fish out of water. I'm at a loss to know what to do here. If I'm polite, I'll never get what I need to get or go to where I need to go. You just have to jump in and join the scrum, so to speak. But it's all about perception. That is, how you feel about this situation is all about the perception of that situation. And as for whether it reflects in their karma eventually or not, very small things, yes, very small things may or may not. But again, as I was speaking about yesterday, it's intention. It's probably that the lady who pushed in front of you, seemingly, it was not her intention to do so. She was probably just not aware of your presence and had her mind on much more serious other things. Whether or not that is the case, it doesn't matter. From your perception, it should be one of metta, loving kindness, one of compassion, one of joy for others. So in this case, loving kindness for all beings. Please, you go first. You don't have to say that, but you can think that. Compassion, she may have some very pressing requirements. Someone might be about to die. And mudita, joy for others. Well, you can be happy she got served before you, because you'll be served eventually, as you were very quickly anyway. With this attitude, these issues, as small as you recognize it's a small issue, are not an issue at all. Struggling to stay mindful, my mind is running away quickly. So if you're experiencing that, it's probably whether you're sitting and meditating, or whether it's during other daily activities, then again, take any opportunity you can to come back to observing the breath. Now, this doesn't mean you have to stop everything you're doing, but like just then, between words, as I breathed in, that's all I thought about, as I've just done again. That takes 1-2 seconds. Keep doing that throughout your day, bringing your awareness back to the breath. I'm talking to you, I'm answering this question, but 3 times now 4, just breathed in, fully focusing my conscious awareness, vijnana, on the process of breathing in the body of air through my nose into my lungs. not tracing its journey, but that action of breathing in. Now, it seems like a lot of words, because words are so confusing to us, trying to describe things. And this is a lot of the problems we have, describing things, thinking about things. A narrator in our thinking brains, talking to you, speaking, commentating, giving you a commentary, a running commentary of what's going on. From sanya, perception, retrospective perception, often bringing from the past experiences you've had into this present moment, rather than clearing the decks and allowing what's happening to just be as it is and you be present with it. By bringing your attention like that to the breath, in any opportunity, any moment you have, between words if you're speaking. Bring that in between thoughts if you're thinking. To just slow that thinking process, papancha, rumination, slow that down, put the brakes on. Now, it doesn't slow you down. You can be working quickly, walking quickly. Mindfulness is not walking extraordinarily slowly with your eyes half closed and a smile on your face. That's acting. That's what you see on, I don't know, some YouTube channels, some other media things. Tinkly music in the background, walking extraordinarily slowly, holding flowers. That's not mindfulness. Mindfulness is being real in the present moment with what you're doing. If it needs to be done quickly, do it quickly, but carefully. This is mindfulness. Pindapata, I only walk I walk to the end of my Pindapata route and then get a tuk-tuk back, but it's still 4 kilometers. If I was to walk, as some people walk in meditation, walking meditation, and that's okay. If you need to walk slowly in meditation, that's the opportunity to do so. But on Pindapata, if it's set up, walking down a line of 6 people to put something in your bowl whilst still at the temple, then yes, it's done slowly. But that's acting, that's a show, that's a ceremony. But if it's for the purpose of getting your food for the day, and also the food for many other people, you've got to do it functionally. You've got to get from A to B within a reasonable time frame. So if anything, you're walking more quickly than you would normally. But slowing to almost stopping at places where you know people are going to be coming out to offer something. But never hanging around, waiting. Because you're functioning as a collector of food, a beggar, whom has a job to do, a duty to do. That is to collect enough food to survive another day, but at the convenience of others, not to put them out. So not hanging around to make them feel guilty to have to find something and come out to put it in your bowl, but to just not even glance, but to just slow down enough to give them the opportunity to do so, but then move on quickly if they choose not to. Therefore, causing as little impact as possible, but maximizing what you collect. Not out of greed, but out of generosity, giving people the opportunity to give and offer, and then giving, as the alms mendicant, yourself the opportunity to then share that out with many, many others who need it. That's how I do Pindapata, and that's how I do it mindfully. In all of this activity, one is able to bring one's conscious awareness back to the breath. back to, but it's never gone away, has it? It's just reminding yourself to, just take a moment and breathe in. And this is how you stop your mind keep running quickly, papancha, rumination. Just keep coming back to the breath. Then you won't struggle. Oh, another quite long one. So it says, I am a lay practitioner in the UK, and as you know, we do not really have Buddhist monasteries, or at least they are few and far between. How should we in the UK maintain a practice without that support? Also, when reading sutras, should we read in a certain order? So just with the last one, not necessarily. You can read them in any order, but if you want some order to your learning, if you haven't read the sutras before, then start at the beginning and finish at the end. It's logical. Otherwise, you're not going to remember always the ones you've read. So you'll end up keep reading the same ones over and over again. Like any book, a book of poems, a book of short stories, for instance, doesn't matter which ones you read first, but you're going to read from the front page, page 1, to the last page. Otherwise, you're going to forever be looking for one you haven't read yet. So it's just logical, isn't it? There's no specific order, but one might start with the different books, and a good place to begin with would be the middle-length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya. Then followed by perhaps the connected discourses. Then the short discourses, then the longer discourses. So, and maybe pick up from time to time the numerical discourses. But start with the Majjhima Nikaya. That's a very often quoted starting point for the Sutta Pitaka. But, right, in the UK, few and far between. Well, it's not that bad. As far as Theravada Thai forest monasteries are concerned, there are 4, and they're strategically placed all over the country. Now, India is a very big country. It's lots of countries within a continent, really. And one state, so the state of Karnataka, where I spent most of my time, is the size of the entire UK. It has its own language, and its neighbouring states, Kerala or Goa, or I've forgotten the other ones neighbouring it, are equally large. But in the UK, it's quite a small country by comparison, and to have 4 Theravada Thai forest monasteries strategically placed all over that country is like having, you won't find that many in the whole of the continent of India easily. And you'd have to travel thousands of miles, not hundreds of miles. Now, there's nowhere in England that is that far away from a Thai forest Buddhist monastery. But then there are many other Buddhist organisations throughout the UK that offer support and opportunities to practice. Now, maybe with different cultural influences and styles. Someone asked me about a particular Buddhist centre they go to, which is of a different organisation that has some variances and differences from what we might be used to hearing about from, say, the likes of myself or other monks and nuns in terms of practice regime. And an organisation, some organisations don't have a monastic sangha, just a group of practitioners who are lay practitioners, whom all help out and some who teach. There may be broad differences, but the core teachings of Buddhism, of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, in any of the schools and traditions are always present, if it's Buddhism. And there's, in the UK, many places you can go to and organisations, such organisations. So Google Buddhist organisations. Don't restrict yourself to what you've become accustomed to and then miss out on finding Kalyanamita, people, other people whom you can associate with who are living in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path. Albeit they may be practicing something entirely different to you. They may be following the Bodhisattva vows in the Mahayana tradition. They may be of no tradition whatsoever and have what they call a secular, non-religious form of meditation practice. But essentially they're practicing one aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path there, similarly to you. Now you're not going there for debate and discussion, you're going there for Kalyanamita, supportive fellow practitioners living in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path. But if there aren't those organisations near you, then there are many online. Here, for instance, you have our combined support and regular talks, at least 3 each week, and every day morning devotional practices, or puja as we call it. Chanting, short meditation and blessings here in the Samadhi Sala in front of the Buddha Rupa here, which can be watched at any time, not necessarily just live, but any time thereafter in your time zone. So there's a community right to hand here and now in the present moment. If you're up to date with what I'm talking about, you've listened to today's talk and there's not another one until tomorrow or next week, I think there's something like 400 you can go back to listen to now that have been recorded over the past few years in different locations, but now, having been here for 3 years, just in Sri Lanka. But there are many other online communities also, whom have their outside ways of contacting and discussing things with each other through other social media platforms, for instance, which I don't get involved in at all. But you can email me directly. I always reply to emails privately, personally, directly. They don't get discussed here. Or you can comment in the comments section here on this platform, where your comments are discussed here, amongst others. That is the purpose of it. So, the other aspect of the practice is, it is necessary to have Kalyanamita support, yes. It is there, if you look for it. But the practice, what you do, is solitary. Your meditation is better done alone. Now it might be helpful to meditate with groups at first, but very soon, as you get used to meditation, you'll find it more comfortable and more readily available for you at any time to meditate alone. You don't have to wait till next Friday night when we all get together in our meditation group at the local centre. No, if you feel like meditating now, meditate. If you don't feel like meditating now, meditate, because it's a good thing to do. You don't need a group to help you with that. In fact, that would be an obstacle. You need to get to a location. You need to wait for everyone to be ready. It will finish at a certain time. No, at home you can meditate all of the time, whenever you wish. So don't feel left out. And also, I will say, in the UK you have dedicated Buddhist centres which are primarily dedicated towards the practice and primarily in that sense towards meditation. Now, despite there being Buddhist monasteries probably every 1 or 2 kilometres along any road in Sri Lanka and huge temples and organisations everywhere, you've got to go a very long way to find anywhere where you can practice meditation or even have anyone knowing what you're talking about when it comes to meditation. There's bhavana, mental development, but here that is done in so many other ways, through dana, through generosity, through devotional practices, through chanting and learning and worship, through building stupas and temples and statues and veneration of those kinds. Usually the last thing people want to hear about or do, often in very predominantly Buddhist countries, is, sadly, meditation. It becomes a very perfunctory and short part of the regular puja, the regular ceremonies. Tisadana Panchasila, refuge in the Triple Gem and taking the precepts, yes, it's done. The chanting is done. The paritas are chanted. The suttas are reflected upon. People study, they learn, they develop their intellectual thinking brains with the Abhidharma. They're very diligent in their monastic lives and practice, adhering to the strictest aspects of the Vinaya and the code of conduct for monks and nuns, but are also busy running organizations, running educational establishments, running everything that goes and is involved in the running of any large organization, especially involving many, many people, both Sangha members of the order itself and the lay practitioners who support it and visit and use those facilities. It's like big business. It requires organization, hierarchies, structure, work. In the UK, you won't find that so much. You will in the larger of those monasteries I've mentioned, a little, but still, even there, the emphasis is on each individual's meditation practice. And time is given for that. Space is given to that. Quietude is available for that. The surrounding peaceful environment is available for that. We built this Samadhi Sala meditation hall for that, because there's 4 monasteries within walking distance here where there's nowhere to sit. They're huge, big monasteries, some with many monks, but there's nowhere to sit quietly and meditate there. Maybe under the Bodhi tree, but it's outside with external difficulties of either very hot sun or in the evening many mosquitoes. But you can do that anywhere outside, can't you? But a meditation hall, a room for meditation, you will find it difficult to find. So don't feel shortchanged. You go to any of these places, you could sit down and meditate undisturbed from the moment you arrive until the moment you leave, and no one will even ask you what you're doing or why you're there. And if you've got to drive 200 miles or go on the train 300 miles, which gets you, I think, coast to coast in the UK, then what's the problem with that? A train that you get a seat on, a train that you queue nicely to get your ticket for, or do it online and get onto, and you can sit down knowing that you're not going to be sitting in something unpleasant. It's clean, it's tidy. Some of them have all sorts of luxuries these days, like toilets on a train. Imagine that. Even drinks are available. Now, if you've spent 12 hours on a train or on a bus where there is no toilet, or if there is, it's something you wouldn't want to get anywhere near, and maybe occasionally a chaiwala will come around throwing milk all over the place and screaming at the top of his voice whilst you're hanging off the top of a luggage rack, just trying to get some form of rest from standing in what is a rugby scrum. then you'll see that even that train journey to the meditation place you're going to, the monastery in the UK, is a beautiful place to sit and just practice. You can sit on that train and meditate. I was last in the UK in 2022, but only for a very short while. And I had to get a train from the airport to where my son was living, because he lives just outside London. My middle son, not my eldest son, who I refer to. And I don't know whether I got a bus or a train. I think I got both. These days, they look like the same thing to me, because here, buses and trains are very different, but they're all very crowded. Yes, if you're a monk in a Buddhist country, you'll get a seat, but you'll still have just men, but you'll still have people coming and sitting next to you and pushing right up against you, and you're squashed in. But I found the journey, even in London, which is, what, a busy city, isn't it? From the airport on the bus or whatever it was to my son's house was absolutely luxurious. I couldn't believe I was on public transport. So meditate there. What are you complaining about? It's perspective again, isn't it? You're thinking, oh, we've only got a few monasteries in the UK, and I'm a lay practitioner, it's not fair. Then if there's really nothing, make an organisation yourself, and I'll help you. Email me. Just find a group of similarly minded people and build your own organisation. Now, I should mention here, there's a new organisation in Oxford. So there's another monastery to this network, of course, if you look it up. The Anukampa project, for lady practitioners primarily, but they welcome men also, which is a beautiful place, I think, you can go and visit and practice at. So, yes, accepting, I think, in one criticism might come up, just I thought of, it's probably quite expensive to travel from A to B on public transport compared to what I'm comparing it to here and in India. But if you have your own transport, then transportation costs are pretty similar across the board, because it's based on just fuel prices, which are the same more or less everywhere. So club together with a few people, fill your car. If you can get 6 people in your car, sharing the fuel bill, and drive to Chithurst on the Sussex-Hampshire border, or drive to Amaravati in Hertfordshire, or Aruna in Northumberland, or Hartridge in North Devon, or Anukampa in Oxfordshire. There are also in Wales, Pembrokeshire, some Buddhist organisations. Now, those journeys, if I was to go round on a bus to all of those places, would represent what, when I was living in India, would be my typical month of travelling around India, each and every month of the 3 years I was there. Travelling overnight for 12 hours on a public bus to go from one vihara to another vihara, all within the same state, or county as we call them in the UK, but a state the size of the whole of the UK. From where I lived in my kuti in Gokarna to the monastery I had to go to every 15 days for Uposatha and Patimokkha was a 12-hour bus journey, which I chose to take overnight when it was coolest, all the way there, and then a 12-hour journey all the way back, every 15 days. And sometimes other journeys of a similar nature and length to other viharas and kutis, visiting other monks during my stay there. Standing for most of the journey, often, especially if it was during the day. Monks are not allowed to go on sleeper buses where you have a curtain and are laying down and you lay down. It's not appropriate. We are sitting on a sitting ordinary government bus And also we need to find someone we don't use money to pay for it at one end. So in order to do that, you get the cheapest possible, a few rupees, pennies. So, perception, again. You're not in India, you're in the UK. I know I haven't been there for some years, a few years now, but last time I was there, it wasn't that long ago. It was positively luxurious and actually one of the nicest places I would, if I hadn't have been less mindfully looking out of all of the windows to see what was going on as I was at the time, it would have been a wonderful opportunity. If that had been my regular journey, that particular bus or train, can't remember what it was, maybe both, I would have really welcomed that opportunity to sit and meditate on that bus or train. Especially if I was heading to one of those few monasteries you mentioned. So good luck with that. And your support, if you really can't find it still, email me. Your support is here. We're here to support you. I'm here to support you. I may be far away, but these days online, nothing's that far away. Come and visit me here if you can. That's for anybody, an invitation for anyone. Did I hear you say that you can't be a monk or nun if you're disabled? Surely I didn't hear this. If so, I'm now questioning the entire religion I began practicing, the philosophy, the religion that I thought held compassion at heart. Well, metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, joy for others, is the core of Buddhist practice, which is open to lay practitioners and ordained men and women. So we have the fourfold assembly of lay men, lay women, upasakas and upasikas, ordained men and ordained women, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. The ordained sangha, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, are required by the nature of that ordination and the renunciant nature of that lifestyle they have chosen to follow a body of rules, a set of rules, which are of a number of 227 for a man, a bhikkhu, and 311 for a woman, a female. And those rules have to be closely observed, and they pertain to our mode of conduct in all respects, from eating to going to the toilet, to how we sleep, to how we converse with the opposite sex, to how we converse with each other, with our practices, what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it. Everything is covered and has not changed since the time it was written, during the time of its conception, through 45 years of teaching that the Buddha gave during his lifetime, 2,570 years ago. To date, it has remained unchanged, unlike any other organization. Which is why the ordained sangha has remained strong and intact throughout those millennia for that length of time, because it has adhered to these rules. To support the unordained practicing lay followers of Buddhism, upasakas and upasikas, whom have chosen to live in lay life, but can also choose varying degrees of renunciation. Say, for instance, keeping on certain days, or all of the time, 8 precepts rather than 5 precepts, or even extending it to 10 precepts or more. I chose to live on the 227 bhikkhu rules even prior to my ordination, because I was unable to ordain for a while. I had to ordain later than I wanted to for some years, but was able to just about live in lay life as a lay practitioner, following monastic rules, or the ones that were practical to do so, to support my practice. And anyone is invited and can do that. The Buddha taught for 45 years out of infinite compassion for all followers of the Dharma, his teachings. And he left the Sangha to support those practitioners. But the Sangha isn't a place for anyone whom isn't determined to renounce worldly life and just adhere to the Vinaya code of conduct and that way of practice. It doesn't make exceptions whether you are physically fit or if you are disabled. It doesn't matter. It's not discriminatory. It says, you join this organization, you ordain, you follow these 227 rules. If you can't, you cannot ordain. That is what it says. So yes, if you are missing certain limbs, arms or legs, or if you have a debilitating condition that requires a lot of attention, then you would be unable to live in certain places. So if your Sangha required you to go and live in the forest with another monk and help him for a certain period of time, you would be unable to do so. You would perhaps even need support yourself and therefore be a drain on Sangha resources, not physical resources, material resources, but people would not be, whom have given up worldly life just to practice, able to do that, because not only do they have their aging population of monks that require looking after, whom have become disabled since ordination, whom need assistance, and that is, of course, a continually growing number of monks in the order who need help and remain as monks, whatever their condition, until they die, and fully supported and looked after. Not only that, people joining who need help would mean that that organization would become untenable. You would also find it would attract a lot of people who need support and can't get it otherwise to an organization because it looks after them. It would become a care organization. Now, it's an organization that cares and it looks after those that have ordained and renounced worldly life. But no, it doesn't take on people whom are sick already with untreatable conditions unless they can manage with that condition themselves on the very basic, simple requisites that a monk or a nun is allowed to have. So it's only a practical thing, it's not a discriminatory thing. And it doesn't discriminate from disabled any more than it discriminates from able-bodied people whom are not disposed to living what they consider from their perception an uncomfortable life. There are many fit, healthy people that visit me here that see where I live, my living quarters, my kuti, living on a concrete floor with no proper doors or windows and a leaky roof and no real facilities other than a water tap and a bucket and a hole in the ground for the toilet, as being something that to them is untenable. I couldn't live like that, they'd say. If they were a travel vlogger, for instance, coming here to Sri Lanka and this was their accommodation, they'd have all sorts of terrible things to say about it. And this is not even considering access, health and safety, and access arrangements with bars and ramps and lifts and all of these things that monasteries in the forest and in jungles and around caves, and even monasteries in England, probably different these days, I expect, but formerly just do not have. They're not hotels. They're not big organizations. They are funded, as I am funded, just by kind generosity of lay practitioners and their donations, which, however small, are gratefully received and put to good use, but are never sufficient to adhere to all of the rules and regulations in the modern world for providing access and for people in exceptional circumstances. Widening doors for wheelchair access, ramps to get up and down, lifts to go to different floors, which are assumed these days to be something that will be in all public places, and possibly rightly so. But of course, in the time of the Buddha, this was not the case. But even now, those rules cannot be adapted, because if they were, the organization itself, the Sangha, would not be able to function. It would become just an organization for the care of others, rather than for the care of people to direct them in practice, and that alone. We give up all other aspects of our lives just to practice as monks and nuns. And we care for each other in the Sangha as we get old and sick and die. But we try to be create as little demands as possible from our brothers and sisters in the Sangha, and don't expect any preferential treatment because we're older or sicker than others. So it turns everything on its head as far as how society views and sees people in different circumstances in the modern world, to being, yes, to some extent, a little bit of survival of the fittest. But that is not to say it precludes anyone from the religion, as you say, or the practice and its compassion that is there, in that you can take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and that Sangha who will support you in your practice, even if you can't ordain yourself. So, maybe taken out of context, but the words in the ordination are requesting basically that you are physically fit and you have all of your faculties about you. That's not to say that someone with missing limbs, an arm or a leg, my father had to have his right arm amputated some years before he died. But in other senses, he was just the same as my father always was. But he wouldn't be allowed to ordain, because that is what is in the Vinaya, that is what is in the rules. And there are certain things he would be unable to do, missing one arm. For instance, going on Pindapata would be very difficult. Manageable, yes, but difficult. And others would feel obliged to really help him, even as a novice monk. It's also a very arduous and tough training process. So as physically able as he was, even missing an arm, he would not have got through or survived the conditions one might have to go through after ordination. These are there to develop humility, to develop patience and endurance. These are there to develop strength of the body and strength of the mind. Because we are required to put in 100% maximum effort, all of our power into the focus of the practice. There's no softening of that or pampering of any particular individual's requirements, whether they be mental or physical. But that's not discriminatory. In fact, it's offering you the opportunity to be better supported by remaining in lay life, where you can practice fully, not having to worry about difficulties that would no doubt manifest themselves if you were to ordain into monastic life as someone that may struggle and have difficulties with that, the conditions. So I think on that note, I should bring this to a close and hope there's something useful there for you to pick up and use. If not, just let it go. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.